Please help me welcome Ivy Larson. Thank you, Ivy.
Okay, thank you. Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm not sure what is it. Just want to make sure which microphone's working. I think it's this one. Okay, thank you for having me. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to adopt an anti-inflammatory, what I call clean cuisine diet. And before we get into this, I'm just going to share just a little bit about my story, and so that you understand what motivated me. And I also want to start by saying, I'm not a physician. I know they read my credentials. I'm an American College of Sports Medicine health fitness specialist. But my husband is a physician, and he's really the medical expert behind clean cuisine and behind what we do. This is a program that we have evolved over, and we've adapted and changed it over the last 15 years. We've really modified and improved it. And it's something that's helped me tremendously. But I'm going to start back from way from the beginning. I just celebrated my 38th birthday. And, I came from a time with, I was born in 1976, but there's a photo of me up there in 1978. I came from a family, a real meat and potatoes family. We didn't eat processed food. We didn't eat, packaged foods. It was, my mom believed in the square meal where you have a glass of milk and you've got your starch and you've got your meat and a little bit of, either a fruit or a vegetable. And dinner, the vegetable would be like iceberg lettuce and maybe like fruit cobbler for dessert or something, but definitely no packaged foods. And so I ate this way, growing up. I was fit, I was lean, I was healthy. And then I was very big into exercise. I was a competitive gymnast, I was a dancer, I was a cheerleader, I went to states in track. So I never had a weight problem, and I pretty much ate what I wanted, and I believed back then that really fitness was the key. I really thought that as long as you exercised, one of the benefits of exercising was that you could pretty much eat what you wanted. And so after I graduated from high school, I went and got my bachelor's degree in business organizational management, which wasn't really my passion. And I then at the same time pursued what was my passion, which at that time was fitness. And so that was how I got my American College of Sports Medicine certification. And I started working in a hospital wellness center. But it was funny because from the time that I graduated from high school until when I graduated high school in 1994 until 1998, my eating habits started to change substantially. And I got away from eating my mom's foods, the home-cooked meals, and I started eating lots of packaged foods, and everything was coming in a package. And this was also, I was reading a lot of women's magazines, and I was, starting to hear about the importance of nutrition, but the message that I was getting was low-calorie, low-fat, lean cuisine. So I remember I would go and teach fitness class, and then I'd come home and open up a lean cuisine for dinner, which would do nothing. I mean, I could eat 10 lean cuisines and would still not be hungry. Would still be hungry. But I was starting to get a little into nutrition, but I wasn't getting the right message. And then it was the summer of 1998 over a 3-month period where I started to have incontinence. I was having bladder urgency and frequency. I was going to the bathroom, I'd have to stop teaching exercise class to go to the restroom. I'd wake up in the middle of the night 7 or 8 times. I had bladder infections. I started getting numbness on my right side. My right leg started to not function properly. I was having a difficult time just lifting my right leg going up the stairs. And I was going to a number of different doctors. I also was having severe bouts of depression. I was going to a psychologist, I was going to an internist, I was going to a urologist, and I was 22 years old. And things kind of culminated one night. It was I was with a fiance, not my husband now, somebody else, and we were watching the movie The Horse Whisperer, and I thought I was having another bladder infection, and I drank this huge thing of cranberry juice to flush out the bladder infection. And then, it was like a 20-ounce thing of cranberry juice. And we get into the movie, and I couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, I felt the urge, I had to go, but I couldn't go. I went to go to the bathroom, and it was the worst, most terrifying feeling imaginable. So I ended up in the emergency room, the same emergency room where I worked at the hospital wellness center. And I left wearing a catheter, and I ended up down the emergency room doctor sent me to the University of Miami and said that he thought that there was a neurological problem. So it was like a week period where I'm wearing the catheter, and my then fiance at the time said, is this how it's going to be, or are you going to be sick all the time? Which that was like the light bulb moment that he was probably not the right guy to be with. We had like a turbulent relationship anyway, but that really set the stage for ending things. And anyway, I at the University of Miami, just to make a long story short, I saw the neurologist, and I was given an MRI, and then the next day after that, I was diagnosed with MS. I was told I was in the early stages of having multiple sclerosis, and I was told, very matter-of-factly, it was a degenerative disease. It progresses. There's no telling. Different people have different. Various debilitating conditions with it. Some people do okay. And there were basically 3 things I could do. And it was, 1, I could start one of the disease-modifying medications. But at the time, I was told that they were contraindicated during pregnancy. They also downregulate your immune system. So there's a lot of, we didn't know what the potential side effects of taking them, especially starting at age 22, when you're 40, so that was an unknown. Also, they exacerbated depression, which I was already having issues with, and I had a boyfriend, not the fiance, but one from way back in high school, who also had been diagnosed with MS, so I knew about MS, and I had also worked with some patients at the hospital, and my then boyfriend, who was diagnosed after we broke up, he had gone blind in his eye, he had been paralyzed on his right side. And so I knew that the disease was very serious. I also was told that I could try a trial medication, but that was even, to me, more scary than the medication, the big immune-suppressing medications. And then the third thing I was told about was an anti-inflammatory diet. And specifically this one, the Multiple Sclerosis Diet book. And that was a diet book that dated back to 1948. And patients who followed Swank's diet were shown to dramatically slow the progression of their disease. Now, this was a diet, again, that was like, decades old, and it was really the main research, the main diet program that was out there for people with MS. So I didn't have a medical doctor in my family. I didn't really have anybody to call or to ask who advice for. My neurologist was telling me it was basically, that the nutrition advice had really, been upgraded or advanced since this book had come out, and that basically what I wanted to follow was an anti-inflammatory type diet. So I called my husband now, who was in medical school at the University of Pennsylvania, and he was a friend from high school. He had been the National Spelling Bee winner. He was valedictorian. He went to Cornell undergrad. He was known as the smartest guy that went to our high school. We came from a small high school, but so I called him and I asked for his advice. And he took a whole day underground. This was before really the internet, and he spent time researching at the University of Pennsylvania. And he was at first very surprised that my doctor would recommend nutrition for a disease like MS. So he spent a whole day underground researching, and then he actually flew down to meet with my neurologist. And after, discussing with Andy and after my neurologist, I decided, there's nothing that I have to lose by giving nutrition a try. And it seemed to me like I was going to have to do this no matter what. So if the nutrition didn't work, I could always, adapt and add to. It wasn't like an either-or decision. I could start the nutrition, and then I could add the medication. It's been 15 years, though, and knock on wood, I still haven't needed to go on the medication. And so what we started to do is then things progressed, and Andy and I got married, and that goes off into another direction. But we started to, and I got pregnant very soon after we were married. I was pregnant we were married in 2000, I was pregnant 3 months later, and we had our son in 2001, he's now 13. And Andy and I started to really research nutrition and really research specifically this anti-inflammatory approach. And what we learned is that, it wasn't just people with MS. Inflammation is really the common denominator that ties so many seemingly unrelated conditions together, like, heart disease and fibromyalgia, even obesity and type 2 diabetes. And endometriosis and arthritis and I mean the list goes on and on. Skin disorders like psoriasis and eczema and all of these conditions, the common thread, the common thing that links them together is inflammation. So my husband also started to adopt this way of eating, and he immediately lost the 15 pounds he had gained in medical school. He had borderline stage 1 hypertension. His blood pressure normalized, and this all happened in a matter of 5 weeks. So I started to write a book. Like I mentioned that my husband and I went to this small kind of high school, and the first boyfriend that I had from a long time ago that had been diagnosed with MS was a friend of ours, and he said, and I would always be writing him, nutrition info, and he said, why don't you write a book? You're at home with the baby, and my husband was in his surgical residency. So he said, if you write a book and you get it published, I'll follow your plan. So I thought, okay. So I wrote, but in order to get the book published, it took me forever just to get it organized to get it published, and then finally we got a publisher interested, and they said that they wanted to have a group of 25 people that did this program because we said it's affecting not just MS, it's heart disease, it's arthritis, it's fibromyalgia, and so they want us to get a testimonial group together. So I pulled all these people together. This was at the Red Bank Atlantic Club in New Jersey, and I had them all do this program, and I got everything organized, and it was the 2 days before the program was about to start, and we had found out our friend AJ had committed suicide. He had just turned 30. And so it motivated me, more than ever to get this book out there, to get the message out there. And so I ran the program. It was a 5-week program, and in the 5 weeks, the results were amazing. And this was, at this stage, we were really just focusing. There was about 7 key things that we were having people do. It was never about counting calories or carbs or fat grams or anything like that. The focus was on optimizing nutrition. We didn't even think that we weren't even targeting this for weight loss because that wasn't the focus, but at the end of the 5 weeks, every single person, except for one who was very thin to begin with, lost weight. So that was when we started adding in that it's also good for weight loss. But there were about 7 key things we were focusing on at that point, and it was 7 key dietary sins, we were calling them, that people were not doing that were contributing to inflammation as opposed to reducing inflammation. And it was, people were eating the wrong omega ratio. They weren't getting enough omega-3 fats. They were getting way too many refined omega-6 fats, which are very pro-inflammatory. And I'm going to expound on all these in just a bit. There were too little fiber, too few micronutrients like antioxidants and phytonutrients found in plant foods, which are highly anti-inflammatory. They were getting too much animal-based saturated fat, eating too many refined, empty-calorie carbohydrates, and what was the last one? Of course, I can't remember. Anyway, I'll expound on more of them when we get to the second part of the speech. But those were really those were the key things we were focusing on, and we would have people go through our 5-week program, and then we got it to an 8-week program, and this was just one example of a lady in let's see if I can get it back there. In 8 weeks, I don't think we can. I don't know if I can zoom it in. It was one lady who in 8 weeks, without doing anything, lost 19 pounds without counting calories or carbs. And that was just one dramatic weight loss benefit. But the benefits from cholesterol, at the end of the 8-week program, they would increase their good HDL cholesterol, decrease their triglycerides, their blood pressure. If they had pain, like from arthritis or fibromyalgia, they would see benefits in as little as 5 to 8 weeks. So we published our first book. It was the Gold Coast Cure, and that we were on the Montel show because he has MS, and he held up the book and said everybody who has MS should try this program. And it was an instant Amazon bestseller, and we sold tens of thousands of copies, and we started getting testimonials from people all over the country. And then it was translated into 7 different languages. So we started to really interact with our patients, or with my husband's patients, and with our new readers. And then we went and wrote the Gold Coast Cure's Fitter, Firmer, Faster program. It was a book more on weight loss, and then Whole Foods Diet Cookbook. And then in 2009 was when we were basically, it was just a repackaging of the same information. And then it was in 2009 where we were introduced to some really amazing research on fruits and vegetables. And it was one of my patients, or one of my husband's patients, who had cancer, and he started just bringing in all this information, that was published in esteemed medical journals on the power of fruits and vegetables. And that was when we really started to make the shift away from just recommending a whole foods diet to recommending much more plant foods. Like the number one, and we say it in our most recent book, the number one diet mistake people make is not eating nearly enough fruits and vegetables. And fruits and vegetables have one of those things, or several of the things that we had identified in the first book. They have the micronutrients. They're loaded with antioxidants and phytonutrients. They're loaded with fiber. They're good carbs. They're loaded with all the carbohydrate energy that they contain. Also comes packaged with nutrients. So plant-based foods are just an amazing anti-aging, anti-inflammatory food, and they also come packaged with protein. Every single plant food has protein, which really, I guess we knew it all along, but we never really thought of it like that, because you don't think of, broccoli as being protein or spinach as being protein, but you look at the percentage of calories in spinach or broccoli compared to the percentage of calories from animal, like say beef, and the percentage of calories in broccoli is actually, there's more protein per calorie in broccoli than there is in beef. So plant foods, every single plant food has protein, and good protein, clean protein. So we started to make this shift, and then I had, we also, at the same time, I had my real health problem actually was not the MS. I had a congenital disorder with my leg, where when you see kids with their feet, turned in, mine were actually turned out. And when I had my son 13 years ago, the pregnancy started to cause a lot of problems with that. So 2 years ago, I had to have a derotational osteotomy, where they go in and they break your, it was done at hospital for special surgery, and they go up at your hip and they break your leg in half, and they rotated the top part into the right position, and they put a rod and they put screws. And so during this time, it was, I had terrible pain, but I also had a massive complication from the surgery where my bone didn't heal. So it was 8 months, and I have a broken leg, and I can't walk, and it was terrible. And so during that time, we started to really learn a lot about dairy, because I thought, maybe it's that I'm not eating all this dairy, maybe that's the reason my bone's not healing. And we started to really research about bone what's healthy for bone nutrition, and it turns out my complication had nothing to do with nutrition. It was just a complication from the surgery. But what we learned about bones and about bone health through this surgery was, that the dairy is absolutely not beneficial for your bones. I mean, the politics involved with dairy and the dairy industry are awful. And this whole thing about drinking, everybody needing 3 cups of milk a day is not accurate. If you actually look at studies, you'll see that they actually link high dairy consumption to osteoporosis, as opposed to the countries that have the lowest intake of dairy and the highest intake of fruits and vegetables and plant foods have the lowest incidence of osteoporosis. Also, we found out dairy is linked to autoimmune diseases, including multiple sclerosis, especially type 1 diabetes in children that are fed dairy as opposed to mother's milk if they're fed cow's milk. That's a very strong correlation between type 1 diabetes. We also found dairy is the #1 food allergy. 75 to 85% of the world's population are lactose intolerant. The whole thing about dairy just goes on. And so we learned a lot about dairy. We also learned that really there's about 18 to 20 different nutrients, not just calcium, not just vitamin D, not just magnesium, that are so important for bone health. Vitamin K2 is one, and nobody's even heard of it, and yet vitamin K2 helps direct the calcium away from your arteries and into your bones. And nobody knows about, vitamin K2. All you ever hear about for bone health is calcium, and now you hear vitamin D and maybe magnesium. But anyway, what we found is that really a plant-based diet is healthiest for your bones, in addition to, being a very anti-inflammatory, anti-aging diet. And so it kind of cut off my husband and us up there, but there we are at the very top. My husband now follows this program. My son, who's 13, he's been raised this way. And this is the way, we have our entire family, even my parents are doing this way. And we've all, our health has improved. And I think my husband, he's just turned 41. I mean, I look at him compared to the other doctors. He's definitely aging slower. And me, and I always say knock on wood, but, my MS has been in remission. And so the science behind clean cuisine and what it really is, it's actually designed to combat the two main things, and one is malnutrition and inflammation. And I didn't really talk about malnutrition earlier, but when you think about malnutrition, a lot of times you think about like not having enough calories. Where really malnutrition, you can have an abundance of calories. Like you can drink Coca-Cola all day long, Coca-Cola, French fries, and McDonald's cheeseburgers, and you can get plenty of calories, but you can still be malnourished. And the thing is the malnourished body is going to be hungrier than it really should be. It's going to always be having food cravings. And you think about like women nowadays with pregnancy, and maybe like 60 or 70 years ago, you didn't see people gaining like 70, 80 pounds during pregnancy, whereas nowadays, it's like you see more and more women are having like the hardest time not gaining a massive amount of weight with pregnancy. And one of the reasons that my husband and I think, is that, they're just not getting enough nutrition. And then when they're pregnant, they're in this state where their body needs nutrients, so it's even hungrier than it normally would be. But as my husband's actually a bariatric surgeon, so he deals a lot with people who, they are obese. They're 400, 500 pounds, and they have a psychologist and a nutritionist that talks with them beforehand. And the number one thing they're all saying is that they are hungry. They're not. That's the reason that they say they can't get their weight under control, and they've tried all these diets. But the thing is if your body isn't getting enough nutrients, you're going to feel hungrier than you really should be, and you're going to have a hard time controlling your weight without also having to battle hunger. And it's not just vitamins and minerals, but also antioxidants, phytonutrients, and essential fats. Those are so, so important. Antioxidants and phytonutrients are found mostly in plant-based foods, and phytonutrients are only found in plant-based foods, and you can't really get those from a pill. And then essential fats are so important, and essential fats, especially the omega-3 fats, are highly, highly anti-inflammatory, and yet I think it's something like 20% of the population has omega-3 fats so low that you can't even detect them, and the vast majority of the rest of the people have extremely low omega-3 fat if you were to do their blood work and test their omega-3 fats. And yet the omega-3 fats are so important for your immune system, your cardiovascular system, your central nervous system, your reproductive system. MS is actually a disease of the central nervous system. And sometimes I think back, if I hadn't have been eating all that, processed packaged foods, if I'd been getting more essential fats, in my diet in my early 20s, I probably wouldn't have been diagnosed so early. And those three nutrients, the essential fats, the antioxidants, and the phytonutrients are so deficient in the modern day diet, and especially a diet that contains a lot of packaged processed foods. And those conditions, or those malnutrition, can actually directly cause, contribute, or worsen obesity, osteoporosis, diabetes, and cancer. And then when you talk about inflammation, that's really the body's tendency to attack itself, which is what happens in MS or rheumatoid arthritis. And inflammation is going to cause or worsen autoimmune disease, asthma, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, allergies, lupus, Crohn's disease. These are just a few of the diseases that are made worse by inflammation. And of course, blood vessel disease, like your heart disease. And you also want to keep in mind that your blood vessels are your lifeline. So anything that's going to negatively affect your blood vessels and your cardiovascular system, your blood vessels directly supply your skin with nourishment and nutrition. And if your blood vessels aren't healthy, your skin's going to age faster too. So you can almost like look at somebody and tell whether they're accelerated aging on the outside, just by looking at their skin health. And then, and pain. Of course, inflammation is going to make pain worse. Osteoarthritis, sluggishness, fibromyalgia, those are just some of the things. And then, we had talked about clean cuisine has benefits, or an anti-inflammatory clean eating diet has benefits to tons of people. I mean, healthy people, even if you don't have any of those conditions, you're going to show an improvement in your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your triglycerides, your CRP level. That's a level or measurement of inflammation in your blood. Decreased body weight, decreased body fat, and also less hungry, better mood, more energy. So really, it's beneficial for anybody. And when you talk about, some of the benefits or some of the studies that actually link this type of eating, we looked at the Lyon Diet Heart Study, and that was a study that actually showed that patients who were eating the low-fat, standard American diet, and they had already had a heart attack, and you compare them to, say, a Mediterranean diet, which isn't totally the type of diet we're recommending, but it leans more in that direction. There was actually a 70% reduction in second heart attack or second heart disease medical problems from people who were following the Mediterranean-style diet as opposed to the low-fat standard American diet, which is not good. And also, I briefly talked about the swank diet, and that was actually a 31-year study that showed that people who followed this swank diet, which was low in animal fat, had their MS rates dropped from 80% to 31%. And that also, the swank diet wasn't even a totally optimized diet, but it was a move in the right direction because they were eating less animal foods. Okay, so now, just a word quickly before I go into the specifics about what it's about, just a word about low fat, low carb, and high protein. Because I talked earlier about how we never had people counting carbs or fat grams. Instead, we were shifting the focus over to making sure that they made their food
Thank you for attending the 14th.
Real research shows that a huge range of fat, dietary fat, is acceptable as long as it's good fat. And I will talk to you more about that in just a minute. Also, the same thing with carbohydrates. There's such a huge movement towards low carb and people thinking that carbohydrates are bad. Carbohydrates are actually the cleanest, one of the best foods for your body. Fruits and vegetables are loaded with good carbohydrates. Even foods like potatoes, white potatoes are an unrefined whole food vegetable that are very nutritious, and they're actually loaded with resistant starch. So your body doesn't even absorb all the starch or the calories in the potato. So carbs aren't bad, it's just you want to make sure you're getting the right type of carbs, and I'll talk about that in a minute too. And then as far as protein, almost everybody, as long as you're getting enough calories, is getting enough protein. This whole thing about going out of your way to get excess amounts of protein, extra amounts of protein just end up really, they end up basically just being extra empty calories. And you'll be surprised when I show you how little protein your body actually really needs. And so if you're going out of your way to get protein shakes and protein bars and Greek yogurt and all this stuff to get more protein, you're really just getting extra empty calories that your body doesn't need. You'd be a lot better off going out of your way to get more essential fats, phytonutrients, and antioxidants, because those are really the nutrition components that people are missing and most deficient in. Definitely not protein. Okay, so fast forward past that, and now we get to the science behind clean cuisine. Okay, so the carb primer. So these are basically the foods you want to eat more of and eat less of. And it's really just this simple. First of all, getting away from anything in a box and in a package is one of the best things you can do. And getting more beans. Beans are like a superfood. They're loaded with plant-based good protein. They're loaded with that resistant starch that I said the potatoes have. They're also loaded with antioxidants and phytonutrients and fiber. Same thing with fruits, and this is even true for diabetics. And my husband always gets this question by his diabetic patients who've been told to limit their consumption of fruit. And if you actually look at the studies, you can eat, they've even done a study so extreme where they had people eat nothing but fruit, and they were diabetics, and I can't remember what medical journal it was. But as long as it was the whole fruit, and it wasn't fruit juice, but it was, whole, like apples and bananas and kiwi, as long as they ate the whole fruit, it didn't matter how much of it they ate. It was that you don't want to isolate the juice. You don't want to just take away, from the apple and just have the juice, even if it's fresh juice. So this whole juice craze that people are on is really not whole food nutrition. You're far better off doing smoothies where you put the whole, berries or the whole banana in there. Same thing, whole grains, as long as they're unrefined whole grains, are totally fine. But not bread that's made with a little bit of, whole wheat flour. You want to look for sprouted whole grain bread that's made with, doesn't even have flour. It's made with, with real whole grains. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Food for Life or Ezekiel bread. Does anybody? know that that's like the real bread that we're talking about. That's like, it doesn't even have flour. It's made from, sprouted whole grains, and not just wheat. It's made from a mixture of different grains. You're getting diversity. Potatoes, bananas, corn, and as many vegetables as you can consume. And if you do nothing else, and you, after this whole talk, because I know a lot to absorb, but if you do nothing else but just add a fruit and a vegetable to every single meal you eat, including breakfast, that will do absolutely wonders for reducing inflammation, for helping you manage your weight, for your cardiovascular health, for anti-aging, for so many things. Make sure you're eating more carbs of the right carbs is super important. And then as far as eating less carbs, though really the main ones that you want to eat less of are any kind of sugar, and sugar goes under so many different names. Refined flour, whole wheat flour is good, but or whole grain flour is okay, but any flour that says enriched or refined flour is a nutrient-poor carbohydrate. And then refined or enriched grains. Let me just see how I'm doing on time, because I have to not talk too much. Okay. So now moving on to how do carbs affect the body? Well, bad carbs they're going to increase your risk of diabetes. They're also going to actually increase inflammation in your body, and that's because carbohydrates, if they're not burned for energy, are actually converted by your body into saturated fat, and it's a specific type of saturated fat that's very pro-inflammatory. The good carbs combat malnutrition. They help curb food cravings. They help reduce inflammation. They help with obesity. They actually, even the good carbs, acts as an internal sunscreen. So like lycopene, foods with beta carotene, they've actually done studies and shown that these foods actually help protect your skin from sun damage. And now, as far as fats. So fats are really important, the types of fats you eat for controlling inflammation. The good fats are plant-based fats, even plant-based saturated fat, which is really totally different from a biochemical standpoint than saturated fat in, say, animal food, like butter versus coconut oil. Even though they both contain saturated fat, the types of they shouldn't even be called the same thing, because they act in your body as totally different substances. And so plant-based saturated fats are good. All plant-based fats are good, but this is the important thing, is that you want to make sure that you're getting as many of the plant-based fats as you can in their whole food form. And this is really important when it comes to oils, especially in packaged foods. Back in 2005 when we did our first book, people were eating a lot of trans fats. And that actually was the seventh thing, when I couldn't remember what it was that you're not supposed to do. It was trans fats. But nowadays, I think everybody's heard the message. I mean, how many of you have heard the message that trans fats are bad? Probably everybody knows, like, don't eat hydrogenated oil. Trans fats increase inflammation. They impair artery dilation. They raise your bad LDL, your lousy cholesterol. They decrease your good protective cholesterol, the type that sweeps your artery clean. So trans fats are bad. But what's happened is, in the processed packaged food world, they have gone away with trans fats, because the general public and population is kind of aware of that, and they've started to replace them with vegetable oils. So if you start to really read the ingredients, not the nutrition facts, because really the nutrition facts do not tell you anything about the actual nutrient density of the food, but if you read the ingredients of packaged foods and you start to see the types of oils that they list, they're highly inflammatory omega-6 refined oils. So they're like corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil. These oils are very cheap, unhealthy oils that are going to increase inflammation in your body. They're also going to contribute to obesity, and that's for several reasons. One, they're so easy to overconsume, and two, they also decrease your body's sensitivity to insulin. And then three, because they increase inflammation. And anything that increases inflammation is going to make it harder for your body to burn fat and harder for you to control your body weight. So you want to think of getting fats from plants, but in their whole food form. So avocados are amazing. The nuts and seeds, the chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, Even peanut butter. Peanut butter is in its whole food form. It's just been ground up. And when you do use oils, you just want to use them judiciously, and you don't want to, I mean, everybody always hears about olive oil being such a great oil, and it is healthy, but nobody's ever going to improve their health by pouring on glugs of olive oil. I mean, even like flax seeds versus flaxseed oil. Flax seeds, it seems like were all the rage a few years ago, and now it's chia seeds. And both of those are great, but if you had to compare the nutritional benefits of flax seeds versus flaxseed oil, the seed is always going to be more nutritious. I mean, the seed has fiber, it's got phytoestrogens, it's got lignans in it, it's got, all the phytonutrients and the antioxidants, and the oil just has the omega-3, basically. You're missing all the other good stuff. So always, always try to get fats from plants in their whole food form. And it doesn't really matter, the ratio of how much you eat. It's more just that you want to make sure that you're getting them in whole food form, not so much in oil form. And then the omega-6, the bad fats to avoid are basically trans fats, which are the hydrogenated oils, the omega-6 rich oils, the vegetable oil. If you have vegetable oil in your cupboard, you want to get rid of vegetable oil, and animal-based saturated fats. So animal-based saturated fats, meaning really if you eat a lot of animal foods, every single animal food is going to have saturated fat. So really that means eating less animal foods. And that was one of the main things that I started off doing when I started with the Swank diet, was really just reducing. I stopped eating processed foods, and I dramatically cut my consumption of animal foods down. And that was in the Swank diet, just for the MS patients. The number one thing he had people do was decrease their consumption of animal foods. Okay, so how does fat affect the body? So good fats, they directly fight inflammation, especially the omega-3 fats. Specifically, omega-3 fish oil is one of the most anti-inflammatory substances that exist on the market without a prescription. Bad fats also are going to cause inflammation, and then the more bad fat and the more excess bad fat you eat, then the more good fat you need to combat it. So the problem is if you're eating a lot of it's complicated, like the biochemistry of it, but the more, let's say, vegetable oil or corn oil that you eat, then the more your body needs certain omega-3 fats. And so if you keep eating more and more, bad omega-6 fat in the vegetable food form, your body, and you're not getting enough omega-3 fats, you're putting your body in a very inflammatory state. And the problem is most people aren't even getting enough omega-3 fats to begin with. And then now talking about protein. Okay, so this is the thing. If the Institute of Medicine actually recommends that and says that you really only need about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And so that would mean that a 120-pound woman would really only need 44 grams of protein a day, which I'm going to show you in a minute what a sample menu might look like. But 44 grams of protein is not very much. The problem is the average American right now is eating, let's see, we'll go up here. The average American is eating about 100 to 120 grams of protein a day. And that amount is really an amount that really should only be eaten by somebody if your ideal body weight was between 275 and 330 pounds. So the more protein that you're getting, you're pushing off your plate the antioxidants, the essential fats, and the phytonutrients that your body really needs more of. So an easy rule of thumb, though, is to just take your body weight and divide it in half, and that's about as much protein as you need. So if your ideal body weight, not your current body weight, so if your ideal body weight was, say, 140 pounds, just divide that in half, and that's 70 grams of protein, and that's a good kind of ideal amount that you would need each day. But definitely not more than that. And more than that, again, is just going to be like empty calories. And so where is the protein? So protein is everywhere. I mean, protein, every single unrefined plant food is going to contain protein. Plants can't exist without protein. So broccoli, beans, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, all of these foods have protein. And if you look at, there's no such thing as having to combine proteins. I mean, your body doesn't even absorb all the amino acids directly. Like, let's say you ate chicken, and it has all these different amino acids. Your body stores them and then assimilates them over a 24-hour period. So you don't need to combine proteins or make sure that you get a complete protein. As long as you're getting enough calories, your body will utilize that protein, and you'll get you won't have malnutrition. And then this was just a little fact that 52% of the calories in spinach come from protein. Broccoli contains 38% protein, and black beans contain 26%. And then it says, did you know your body cannot use protein directly from the food you eat? And that was something that I just stated. Your body stores and releases the amino acids it needs over a 24-hour time period. So you definitely, again, do not need to combine protein or go to the hassle of combining protein to achieve protein completeness. And another question we get all the time is, if you exercise, do you need more protein? Well, it's like kind of yes and no. You need more calories if you exercise, but you definitely don't need to go out of your way to get more protein. As long as you're getting more calories, you're going to be getting more amino acids, and you're going to be, by default, getting more protein. But you don't need to go out of your way to get extra amounts of protein. And this is just an example of some of the foods, the plant-based, unrefined whole foods that have a lot of protein. Nuts and nut butters, seeds, seed butters. These are all foods that I eat on a daily basis. Beans, legumes, lentils, tofu. Tofu is a whole soy food. It's totally different than like soybean oil. That's one of those processed omega-6 unhealthy oils we talked about, but tofu is a really good oil, or good fat, whole food fat. Edamame, and tempeh. I wish it keeps cutting off the bottom of my screen. Also, it says only choose whole soy and avoid soy protein isolate. Soy protein isolate is something that you're going to find a lot in, especially if you're somebody who does a lot of protein shakes. A lot of vegan protein shakes are made with soy protein isolate. And basically, they've just isolated the protein, and they've taken out the essential fat, the fiber, the phytonutrients, the antioxidants, and all the good stuff in soy, and they've just put over there the processed protein, which is just a processed food. Okay, and protein for a vegan diet. The World Health Organization has actually established that soy protein eaten alone, even with nothing else, has enough of a high enough concentration of amino acids necessary to meet human health requirements. So that's just a thing on soy. And this is vegans. Now, we're not vegan, and I'll get to it, just a brief explanation of why we're not. But this is just to show you how quickly 72 grams, I think it was, of protein add up in a day. So for breakfast, I took one day just everything that I ate in a day, and I wrote down exactly what it was, and then at the end of the day, we tallied up how much protein it was in. So for breakfast, I had a strawberry and banana no milk shake, which I call it in our book, and on the website. We have a website called Clean Cuisine that has tons of free recipes, and we do nutrition articles and videos and all kinds of stuff. And one of the most popular shakes and popular recipes on our website are our no-milk shakes. And they're basically a number of different, all kinds of flavors, and a lot of them I make with hemp seeds. And 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, an amazing plant food, and an amazing plant source of protein, has 8 grams of protein. So I make my no-milk shake with a frozen banana, 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, and a cup of frozen strawberries. And I have 10 grams of protein just right there from breakfast. For snack, I had a super green smoothie. That was 2 handfuls of romaine lettuce, 2 grams of protein, a cup of frozen blueberries, another gram of protein, a tablespoon of chia seeds, 2 grams of protein, and 2 dates. And that's like negligible, but that was an additional 5 grams of protein for my super green smoothie. And then for lunch, I had a vegan Cobb salad. It was 3/4 cup of beans for 11 grams of protein, half a cup of quinoa, 4 grams of protein, 1/4 of an avocado, that was 2 grams of protein, some mixed greens and tomatoes, 2 tablespoons creamy cashew dressing, that was a no-oil dressing that I made just with cashews, and a slice of sprouted whole grain bread. And so that gave me 24 grams of protein. And then we go back over here to dinner, and that was grilled tofu with vegetable kebabs and black rice. Black rice is an amazing antioxidant-rich rice, by the way. And a coconut ice cream for dessert, and that all gave me 33 grams of protein. And at the end of the day, I had 72 grams of protein, which was more than enough for my body weight. So are we vegans? And the answer is no. We do something called Meat-Free Monday, where we have no meat and no animal foods at all. But the reason we're not vegans is because we do like to eat we actually like the flavor of meat, but also because if you really dig deep into the medical research, you'll see that you can actually be mostly vegan and not go all the way vegan and still reap the benefits of a vegan diet, so long as you're eating plenty of fruits and vegetables and tons of unrefined plant foods. So you can't be eating vegan cupcakes and reap, significant health or anti-inflammatory benefits. But as long as you're eating tons of fruits and vegetables and unrefined plant foods in their most natural state, you're going to reap plenty of benefits. And then if you go ahead and you have, a little bit of steak, and when we do, I can't go into it too much here, but in the book we talk about the importance of choosing really the cleanest animal foods when you do choose the animal foods, such as pastured eggs versus free range. I mean, how many of you know the difference between pastured versus free range eggs? Or how many of you heard of free range eggs? And how many have heard of pastured eggs? So the difference is like the free range eggs conjure up the image that the eggs are running free and that they're, living out in the wild. Or you hear about like omega-3 rich eggs or vegetarian eggs. Anything that's labeled vegetarian eggs is like not good because chickens are not supposed to be vegetarian. Chickens are supposed to forage for worms, and they're supposed to have grass, and they're supposed to be out on pasture. So pastured eggs are ones that the chickens are, they're raised on pasture, and by being raised on pasture, they're eating grass, and they're eating the bugs and the worms and the things that chickens are supposed to eat. And they're much healthier. The chickens are healthier themselves, and their eggs are healthier. Their omega-3, omega-6 ratio is much more optimal. It's optimized, or it's not going to have a inflammatory omega-6, omega-3 ratio. But anyway, when you do choose the animal foods, choose quality over quantity, and just make sure you're going for the highest quality. Organic isn't necessarily the best. You want to choose wild fish, pastured eggs, pastured chicken, pastured beef, that sort of thing. And also these are some of the nutrients that are found in animal foods that you really can't get from a plant food diet, and that's vitamin B12, iron. Plant foods do have iron, but they don't have the same type of iron, the hem iron that's more bioavailable or more absorbable that you'll find in animal foods. DHA, that is the long-chain omega-3 essential fat, the omega-3 essential fat that's highly anti-inflammatory. Omega-3 plant foods like flax seeds and chia seeds will have omega-3, but they have it in the LNA form that your body has to convert to DHA, and there's so many factors that thwart the conversion process. So animal foods like wild fish and pastured eggs are a direct source of DHA, so it's easier for your body to absorb. Vitamin D and zinc. And then superfoods daily. These are just a few foods. I make sure every single day to include like at least one, sometimes 2 or 3 superfoods in my diet, and I kind of rotate them. And these are just a few of my favorite ones. Goji berries. I also have this stuff, goji powder, acai powder or acai berries, cacao nibs, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and in our book and on the website, we have tons of recipes incorporating these. I think I already talked about the no milk shake made with hemp seeds that's very creamy. It's rich, it's delicious, and you don't even miss the dairy. Also, I make nut milks and nut creams as substitutes for full-fat dairy that taste every bit as rich and every bit as delicious, and they're much more easily absorbed, and especially for anybody that has lactose intolerance, which a good deal of people do have. Also, just a few miscellaneous things that we get a lot of questions about. Coffee is totally fine. It's actually a really good source of antioxidants. Tea is fine, green tea. Wine is okay on our program. My husband and I are big wine aficionados. We always have a glass of wine with dinner. Beer and liquor, not so much. That's because it has obviously the alcohol, but it's missing the antioxidants. At least wine has a lot of antioxidants, and there's actually a good deal of research in our book about wine because we like it so much. So we had to find Some research on it. Dairy definitely is not needed. Chocolate, dark chocolate is okay. And if you go to our Clean Cuisine website, we're actually just launched an online 8-week challenge. And it's the first one. We used to run those health and body makeover programs like I talked about in Red Bank, New Jersey, and we run them down in Palm Beach. But this is the first one that we've started online. So it's free to join, and the website is cleancuisine.com, and it's every day for 8 weeks. You can sign up at any time, but every day for 8 weeks you'll get a new tip, and you'll be slowly over the course of 8 weeks changing your diet. We give meal plans, we give recipes, and if you join, we have over, I think it's almost 100,000 people on our Facebook. We've got like 60,000 on Twitter. We have a big online community. So if you go to our website, you can kind of find us through there. And my husband and I both answer questions and interact with our readers. So I think that's it. I'll take questions if anybody has them. Yeah.
All right, do we have some questions? I noticed, is that right, Ivy? Was there chocolate on the very top of your pyramid?
Oh, there was. So that
Okay.
was, yeah.
So you can have chocolate and
a little
wine.
bit. Chocolate and wine.
Pretty much
yeah.
my dream diet. Who has a question for Ivy? That was very interesting.
I was wondering about canola oil.
Yeah, no, canola oil has omega-3s, and actually in our first book, we were saying, that we thought it was okay, but really once we did more research, it's more of a neutral oil. It's not like a super beneficial oil. It doesn't withstand high heat temperatures well. So basically, we put the oils into, all oils we say to have in moderation, but there's oils that are for heat and then oils that are for no heat. And so for no heat, your best bet is to go for oils that are rich in omega-3s. So that would be like flaxseed oil or hemp seed oil or walnut oil, and just, drizzle those over like salad or something that you're not gonna heat. And then for oils that withstand high heat temperatures, and canola oil doesn't, extra virgin olive oil for moderate high temperature, but coconut oil, extra virgin coconut oil is really good for high heat temperatures. So that's kind of and avocado oil and macadamia nut oil are also really rich in monounsaturated fat, oleic acid specifically, and they're also good for higher heat temperatures, higher than olive oil.
There's a question here, and let me just ask it on my way. You mentioned a cashew dressing, so did you put that in a food processor or something to make the dressing?
Yep, you put cashews, you can put oranges and a little bit of water, and then some vinegar, and we have a whole number on the website of no oil dressings that are made with not just cashews, but like hemp seeds. I have a vegan hemp Caesar salad dressing that's amazing, that's made just with hemp seeds and no oil.
Yeah, I'm curious. I cook a lot of Indian kind of food, and I use ghee, which has no milk in it. It's just basically cooked butter.
Butter.
And it's fabulous, and it's supposed to be extremely healthy. What do you think about it?
Ghee you'd be better off using the extra virgin coconut oil, because I use a lot of Indian cooking too, and I just do the extra virgin coconut oil in place of the ghee. The extra virgin coconut oil is going to be a lot healthier, a lot better for you, because it is still animal-based saturated fat. That's what ghee is. And animal-based saturated fat is definitely pro-inflammatory. And and there's no phytonutrients in it at all. And you look at that in direct comparison to the extra virgin coconut oil, and the nutritional comparison, the extra virgin coconut oil is going to give you so much more benefits. And it's withstands high heat temperatures, so it's totally good for. The flavor, as long as you get extra virgin, does not have that tropical flavor to it. And that sometimes it's good, but sometimes it's not.
A question back here, Ivy.
You just listed off what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
You what?
Right? What you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Do I throw off for breakfast?
But what do you do when you go away for a 2-week vacation? What do you do?
Well, I eat, I'll go to, actually today, when I was on my way here, I was starving and couldn't find anywhere, so I went to a steakhouse, and I knew for sure I could get a baked potato and some steamed vegetables, and they actually had a salad bar, so I ate that, and I was totally fine. I eat lots of beans. I look for on the menu, and I do eat meat. I usually try to eat meat just at dinner time. I'll try to eat vegan up until dinner time. I'll carry with me, the sprouted whole grain bread. I carry lots of nuts and seeds and dried fruits. I eat a lot of fruit. Right now in my purse, from the little, they have a conference, or I don't know what you call it, like the VIP room for the speakers here. They had a bunch of fruit. So I took a banana and an orange. I'll eat that later as a snack. I mean, I definitely I really don't have problems, going out to eat. Even at the airport, I mean, I can always find, like, my go-to is always like some fruit and some nuts. If I need something like in a hurry and I'm on the go and it's hard to find. And even like a Larabar, that's like the only snack bar that I think is truly healthy. And if you read the ingredients, the only thing that's in it, it's just dried fruit and nuts and seeds. And then they have all different flavors, like, key lime pie and apple pie and carrot cake and blueberry pie and, an amazing assortment of flavors. And the ingredients are just pure and simple. It's just an assortment of dried fruits and nuts and seeds. So that's like kind of, if I'm really hungry and can't get to like a meal, I do that. But you'd be amazed at how many places have beans and legumes.
Yeah.
One
last question, Ivy.
Hi, my husband was diagnosed with MS about 10 years ago, and we've been really working, and we just got married 3 years ago. Oh. So we've been working on his diet, and he's really, really improving. However, he's still taking Copaxone shots. Mm-hmm. He's cut back on that. But do you find that interferes at all with the absorption of foods? And
no, it's not like an either or. You can definitely do the medication and do this. But he definitely should be on, make sure his vitamin D levels are tested, and definitely be on a high-dose pharmaceutical-grade fish oil, like 2,000, 3,000 milligrams.
All right, thank you very much. Ivy Larson, please thank her.